bits of bric-a-brac in the front rooms. He told me again that Will must still be off drunk, and Will never takes a drink. She spoke to them for the first time as they entered the little sitting room. "He is Walter," Ranton explained to Trent. "Will is Morse, the missing man. Now, Miss Rowan, I have brought Mr. Trent with me because I have asked him to help me find Morse for you, as I promised. And I want you to tell him everything you can about how Landers was killed and how Morse disappeared." "And remember," Trent interposed, "that I know very little about the American Commodities Company." "Why, Mr. Trent," the girl gathered herself together, "you cannot help knowing something about the company. It imports almost everything: tobacco, sugar, coffee, wines, olives, and preserved fruits, oils, and all sorts of table delicacies, from all over the world, even from Borneo, Mr. Trent, and from Madagascar and New Zealand. It has big warehouses at the docks with millions of dollars worth of goods stored in them. My stepfather has been with the company for years, and has charge of all that goes on at the docks." "Including the weighing?" "Yes, everything on which there is a duty when it is taken off the boats has to be weighed. And to do this there are big scales, and for each one a scale house. When a scale is being used, there are 2 men in the scale house. One of these is the government weigher, who sets the scale to a balance and notes down the weight in a book. The other man, who is an employee of the company, writes the weight also in a book of his own, and he is called the company's checker. But though there are half a dozen scales, almost everything, when it is possible, is unloaded in front of scale number 3, for that is the best part for shapes." "And Landers?" "Landers was the company's checker on scale number 3. Well, about 5 weeks ago I began to see that Mr. Landers was troubled about something. Twice a queer, quiet little man with a scar on his cheek came to see him, and each time they went up to Mr. Landers' room and talked a long while. Ed's room was over the sitting room, and after the man had gone, I could hear him walking back and forth, walking and walking, until it seemed as though he would never stop. I told father about this man who troubled Mr. Landers, and he asked him about it. But Mr. Landers flew into a rage and said it was nothing of importance. Then one night, it was a Wednesday, everybody stayed late at the docks to finish unloading the steamer Cavallo. About 2 o'clock father got home, but Mr. Landers had not been ready to come with him. He did not come all that night, and the next day he did not come home. Now, Mr. Trent, they are very careful at the warehouses about who goes in and out, because so many valuable things are stored there. On one side the warehouses open onto the docks, and at each end they are fenced off so that you cannot go along the docks and get away from them that way. And on that other side they open onto the street through great driveway doors, and at every door, as long as it is open, there stands a watchman, who sees everybody that goes in and out. Only one door was open that Wednesday night. The watchman there had not seen Mr. Landers go out, and the second night passed, and he did not come home. But the next morning, Friday morning, the girl caught her breath hysterically. Mr. Landers' body was found in the engine room back of scale house number 3, with the face crushed in horribly. "Was the engine room occupied?" said Trent quickly. "It must have been occupied in the daytime, and probably on the night when Landers disappeared, as they were unloading the Cavallo. But on the night after which the body was found, was it occupied that night?" "I don't know, Mr. Trent. I think it could not have been. For, after the verdict of the coroner's jury, which was that Mr. Landers had been killed by some part of the machinery, it was said that the accident must have happened either the evening before, just before the engineer shut off his engines, or the first thing that morning, just after he had started them, for otherwise somebody in the engine room would have seen it." "But where had Landers been all day Thursday, Miss Rowan? From 2 o'clock on the second night before, when your father last saw him, until the accident in the engine room?" "It was supposed he had been drunk. When his body was found, his clothes were covered with fibers from the coffee sacking, and the jury supposed he had been slipping off his liquor in the coffee warehouse during Thursday. But I had known Lad Landers for almost 3 years, and in all that time I never knew him to take even one drink. Then it was a very unlikely supposition. You do not believe in that accident, Miss Rowan? Trent said brusquely. The girl grew white as paper. Oh, Mr. Trent, I don't know. I did believe in it. But since Will, Mr. Morse, has disappeared in exactly the same way, under exactly the same circumstances, and everyone acts about it exactly the same way. You say the circumstances of Morse's disappearances were the same. Trent pressed quietly when she was able to proceed. After Mr. Landers had been found dead, said the girl, pulling herself together again, Mr. Morse, who had been checker in one of the other scale houses, was made checker at scale number 3. We were surprised at that, for it was a sort of promotion, and father did not like Will. He had been greatly displeased at our engagement. Will's promotion made us very happy, for it seemed as though father must be changing his opinion. But after Will had been checker on scale number 3 only a few days, the same quiet little man with the scar on his cheek, who had begun coming to see Mr. Landers before he was killed, began coming to see Will too. And after he began coming, Will was troubled, terribly troubled, I could see, but he would not tell me the reason. And he expected, after that man began coming, that something would happen to him. And I know, from the way he acted and spoke about Mr. Landers, that he thought he had not been accidentally killed. One evening, when I could see he had been more troubled than ever before, he said that if anything happened to him, I was to go at once to his boarding house and take charge of everything in his room, and not to let anyone into the room to search it, until I had removed everything in the bureau drawers. Everything, no matter how useless anything seemed. Then the very next night, 5 days ago, just as while Mr. Landers was checker, everybody stayed overtime at the docks to finish unloading a vessel, the Elizabethan Age. And in the morning, Will's landlady called me on the phone to tell me that he had not come home. 5 days ago, Mr. Trent. And since then no one has seen or heard from him. And the watchman did not see him come out of the warehouse that night, just as he did not see me at Landers. "What did you find in Morse's bureau?" asked Trent. "I found nothing." "Nothing," Trent repeated. "That is impossible, Miss Rowan. Think again. Remember, he warned you that what you find might seem trivial and useless." The girl, a little defiantly, studied for an instant Trent's clear-cut features. Suddenly she arose and ran from the room, but returned quickly with a strange little implement in her hand. It was merely a bit of wire, straight for perhaps 3 inches, and then bent in a half-circle of 5 or 6 inches, the bent portion of the wire being wound carefully with stout twine, thus. Except for his clothes and some blank writing paper and envelopes, that was absolutely the only thing in the bureau. It was the only thing at all in the only locked drawer. Trent and Randland stared disappointedly at this strange implement, which the girl handed to the psychologist. "You have shown this to your stepfather, Miss Rowan, for a possible explanation of why a company checker should be so solicitous about such a thing as this?" asked Trent. "No," the girl hesitated. "Will had told me not to say anything, and I told you father did not like Will. He had made up his mind that I was to marry at Landers. In most ways father is kind and generous. He has kept the coop we came here in for mother and me for 2 years, and you see," she gestured a little proudly about the bedecked and badly furnished rooms, "you see how he gets everything for us. Mr. Landers was most generous too. He took me to the theatres 2 or 3 times every week, always the best seats too. I didn't want to go, but father made me. I preferred Will, though he wasn't so generous." Trent's eyes returned with more intelligent scrutiny to the mysterious implement in his hand. "What salary do checkers receive, Randland?" he asked in a low tone. $125 a month. "And her father, the dock superintendent, how much?" Trent's expressive glance now jumping about from one gaudy extravagant trifle in the room to another.